Thanks for coming, Neil Roberts.
Not at all, yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself, Neil?
Lovely. Well, my background is the Royal Air Force. I worked in air traffic control for 22 years in various parts of the UK and Central America, of course, and retired back in 1991 and came home and worked in sports development with the local council because my secondary role in the Air Force was very much outdoor activities.
Good. And you're here to talk to us, or talk to me and the cameras, about VE Day, which is coming up. Can you tell us what VE Day is?
VE Day is Victory in Europe Day, and that really marks, that was marked on the 8th of May, 1945. And that sort of put the end, if you like, to the Germans. They had surrendered to the Allies, and VE Day, the 8th of May, was the day allocated to the celebrations that took place across the country and probably across the world as well.
Yeah, and Hitler was dead that month.
Hitler had died then. He had committed suicide. I forget the actual date, but he committed suicide 10 days before, I think it was, something like that.
It's quite interesting. I grew up in a rough family. My father was flight lieutenant, and there were always bits around the house from the war, like his flying jacket, his helmet I've still got, and things like that. And what shook me was, because you sort of think we celebrated D-Day, but we certainly marked it recently. And I sort of thought, well, D-Day, on to France, and then Germans go up. It was nearly a year later, wasn't it?
Nearly a year later, it was. Yes.
And a lot of fierce fighting.
A lot of fierce fighting. It was really a hard slog. It really was. They fought to the sort of the end, if you like, and it wasn't until, well, the Russians came into East Berlin, and the Americans and the English came into West Berlin, and eventually, once Hitler had gone, the remaining generals that were still alive, they then called the surrender. So
it was because of things like the Battle of the Bulge, weren't there?
The
fierce battle.
Awful fighting, terrible fighting. It really was an incredible battle. Yeah. So.
And again, and that seemed, I thought it was much shorter than that. The other one I thought was longer. I thought VJ Day was nearly a year later, but it wasn't, was it? It was quite close.
Victory over Japan, VJ Day, 15th of August, 1945. It was brought to a sudden and crucial end, if you like, with dropping of the atomic bomb by the Americans. Had they not dropped the bomb and they'd gone on, they would need to take island by island to take Japan, and it would cost literally thousands of lives. So in that respect, it lost a lot of lives when they dropped the bomb on the populace of Japan, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, but it saved a lot of other lives as well.
So. I think they're terrible decisions, aren't they?
Awful.
That Churchill and Roosevelt had to make. When Churchill sank the French fleet, that must have been a terrible decision to make.
Awful.
Killing French people. But he daren't let that go into the hand of foreign hands of the Germans.
No.
And the same with Enola Gay dropping the bomb. They were terrible decisions, but they must have, every night they must have thought about those.
They must have. It must have been a gut-wrenching. It must have, to make that decision. But that was the only way that they could bring it to a close. So they had to do it, and I think Roosevelt knew this, and so he made the decision was made.
Yeah, I think cause they've got a new president by then, I think, haven't they? Wasn't it the one that came after him? No. So it's Churchill. Yeah. We got a new prime minister.
We had a new prime minister. As soon as the war finished, unfortunately, he was
out, wasn't he?
He was out.
It must have been a big shock to him. That.
It must have been. Yeah.
I know you've been doing quite a lot of research, and have been for some time. Can you talk us through? I know you've got some there. These are local people who have described what it was like. They were obviously children at the time, presume, what it was like on VE Day in the village.
Interestingly, it's people's memories are varied. As you say, the people that are alive now, they were children at the time, so the memories go a long way back, and there's nothing that really stands out for any of them as far as celebrations are concerned.
Yeah.
some of them, several of them in the parish had family, the male members of the family, away fighting in the Far East, because we were still fighting.
Of
for
course
power,
we were.
of course.
Of course we were.
So that although it ended in Germany, it was still going on out there. But several people have written articles, or written their memories and been submitted in articles to various internet sites. And amongst them has been William Andane, Joan Beckett was interviewed, Frank Carpenter, Margaret Hawkins, Barbara Kent, Arthur Legg, Elizabeth Pugsley, Arthur Roberts, and Frank Roberts as well. So there are memories out there, but there's nothing like you'd expect. You see the pictures today on the television, and they're showing these massive crowds in the centre of London and other cities around the country, massive celebrations going on, people climbing lampposts and shouting and calling for the royal family and that to come out. So you see all that, and you think that was copied right across the country. I think it was certainly in cities, in major cities like Bristol, Birmingham. It was, but down here in St Agnes Parish, there were street parties, but nothing on a colossal scale, of course.
I don't suppose they've got a lot of food for a street party.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's surprising. Yeah, it's how they managed it, but because rationing was still going on, of course. But they certainly did. Sandwiches and things,
And I know I was read recently that the big celebrations in London, the King let a very young Elizabeth Margaret go out the back door into the crowd.
Incredible.
Something,
That must have been something, but for the two princesses as well. I mean, for to go out and be sort of free from all the royalty behind, it must have been a very brave thing to do, to my mind.
I wonder if anybody recognised her.
I don't think they did. I don't think they did, from history tells us. So, so very, very brave thing to do. But coming back to the parish.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we know that VE Day was on 8th of May 1945, and there's various peoples around. On the 7th of May, for instance, William Andane, he was headmaster of St Agnes School, and he was saying, he was writing that our VE Day is imminent, but no instructions have been issued regarding closure. The classrooms are gay with flags of the United Nations. We concluded the day with community singing and the national anthem. And then on VE Day +1, the 9th of May, they were days of national holiday to commemorate the end of hostilities in Europe. And that was compiled by Margaret Hawkins back in the early 2000s. Bill Morrison, another local man, he was away at the time. He was out in Italy, and he was actually in hospital at the time, and he was being treated for tuberculosis on VE Day itself. And he and his fellow patients celebrated with champagne. Bill was a member of the Long Range Desert Group serving in North Africa during the war, and thankfully returned fully recovered. Barbara Kent, bless her, still alive. Barbara lived in St Agnes with her mum and dad at Garden Cottage in Goombal. She was 15 years old when VE Day came about, but unfortunately she doesn't remember anything happening in Goombal by way of celebration. It seems there were very few children living in Goombal at the time, and it was a long way to go to the village. She remembers that the life continued very much as normal, and Barbara and her parents, remembering parts of through the war, would go to the beach just once a year. It was a real treat. Everything had been taken with them, including a large metal teapot. For the water was purchased, and Mrs. Legg, who lived in the cottages where the car park is now, and they paid 2p to have the teapot fill with water. So there's all sorts. Elizabeth Pugsley, she was remembering with the ending of the war in Europe, we had a celebration party in our field behind the bungalow with bonfire and fireworks. Many of our friends and neighbours in Goombal came, and Jimmy Rickard ended the display by setting off an incendiary device. So that must have gone down literally with a bang. That celebration. That's right.
I just came to me as you were saying that the school sang the national anthem. The people you're talking about now, one of that unique group of people who have sung "God Save the King" for 2 different kings.
Yeah, that's right. Of course.
Because Elizabeth was so long on the throne. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Yeah. It's we've got some words here from Barbara Mitchell. She was her maiden name was Lugg. She was actually born in St Earth, but she now lives in St Agnes. And she remembers on VE Day in 1945, she was at Penzance School sitting her O levels at the age of 15. She remembers the whipper in saying at the school, saying how all the children should have the day off, as it had been announced that victory in Europe had arrived. Barbara and some school friends, shown with her in the attached photograph, which will be in this article when it's placed on display for our weekend in July, so people can see the photograph, decided to cycle from Penzance to St Ives via her home in St Earth to join the celebrations.
That's nice.
She remembers in St Ives was dancing in the streets with the black and white American troops, and she remembers also a jumping jack firework was set off and landed in her hair, but fortunately didn't catch fire to her hair. She was
I wonder
safe
what the
there.
American troops were doing here.
They must have been the last ones, sort of tidying up, I guess, after the war had finished.
Yeah.
So they were still,
Because I mean, there were a lot of them there in D-Day, which
most of them have gone off.
had the D-Day sort of celebration.
Exactly, that's right. Most of them have gone off. So yes, so we've got a few sort of little bits and pieces here. Arthur Legg is still alive, and he's got some incredible memories, which I can't off the top of my head. I can't tell you at the moment because I haven't included that into the sheet. But
all of this stuff's going to be available.
It will be available on the weekend of the 19th of and 20th of July for people to look at as well. We'll have some posters on the walls to make it easier for people to read. And we'll also have a folder with various bits and pieces in it as well for them to look at.
It's good of you to do that. A lot of people would like to read that.
Hopefully people will enjoy going through it. And a lot of the names hopefully will leap out at them and say, oh, I remember that person. I remember that person.
A lot of them are St Agnes names like Docking, aren't they? And, the St Agnes families have been here for yonks.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
But let's talk about the day for Ganio, because it sounds like there's going to be more going on at the anniversary than there was actually when it actually happened.
Yes.
So I know throughout the country there'll be celebrations, but certainly in St Agnes, the MMI is open all day, I believe.
It is. Yeah.
And there'll be we've got a singing band on who will be singing Andrew's sister stuff.
That's right.
Heroin and that sort of thing.
Yeah, all
the bar will be open. Can you tell us what else is going on?
Well, we're having a reenactment group, part of the Cornwall Reenactment Society, coming up, and they're bringing military vehicles with them.
Oh, right.
So we know there's going to be a couple of Jeeps. There'll be some classic cars, because there's lots going on this year, as people can imagine, with the celebrations across the country. So a lot of people are going to other events. But we managed to get some cars. We'll be hopefully a motorbike as well. And they'll be on display down in the chapel grounds, the chapel car park.
Okay, yeah.
So people can go down there, they can look at them.
There's plenty of room, isn't there, to walk around?
There's plenty of room to walk around. We're also hoping to have a Bofors anti-aircraft gun, 40mm gun, which will come up from Predannick Anti-Aircraft Battery Museum.
Right.
They've hopefully they're going to be able to bring it up and put it in the chapel grounds with the chapel people, the chapel committee's permission, of course, and put it on display. And the Bofors, of course, is very relevant to St Agnes. We had them out on the Cameron Estate with Camp, as it was then, the anti-aircraft gunnery school.
On St Agnes Head.
It's on St Agnes Head, that's right. So it's very relevant. There's also Bofors over at Perranporth helping to guard the airfield, and Bofors out at Pennalls as well. So
they're quite a big piece of kit, aren't they?
It's a big piece of kit. It is a mobile one, so it's mounted on road wheels. It's towable, so hopefully it'll be up here. And the children, or the adults as well, come to that, can sit on it, and they can elevate the barrel, and they can rotate the gun as well. So, but it won't go bang.
No, kids will love it though. They'll be all over it.
Kids will love it.
Was there you got the guns up there? Were they used much?
They were for training purposes.
Yeah,
the various regiments, platoons, etc., would come here, and they'd be here for 2 weeks, and they'd fire them. usually at a target drone, a drogue rather, towed by Hawker Henley aircraft, which was coming down from Cllr and then would stay overnight in Perranporth, and they would then tow the target past Cameron Camp from the shootout. So
I suppose most of the stuff. I know in Penryn there's a line of houses, and then there's 2 missing, and there's a little memorial thing in that little memorial garden, because that was a house destroyed by a German Heinkel, I think, or something like that, on its way to Falmouth. So I suppose you got the Germans coming down from Plymouth to Falmouth to bomb the ports. And then perhaps you get the odd ones that are flying, or this was seen them flying over St Agnes and this sort of places.
Absolutely. A lot. Cornwall was a very, it was a heavily bombed county.
Right.
There is a chap called Ellis, and I can't remember his proper title now. During the war, he wrote an article for the West Briton, and he said Cornwall was the best bombed county in the country.
Really?
And I think what he meant was that the sort of more bombs on a rural areas like than you, and not to compare it with London or Bristol or Coventry, places like that, or even Plymouth, because Plymouth was heavily bombed, as we all know. But it was certainly bombed. Also, a lot of aircraft escaping the country. They maybe missed their targets. They would come in from northern France. They would go up around across the Isles of Scilly, around and up the Bristol Channel to bomb targets in South Wales. They even went on to bomb Liverpool at one stage, and the cities up that end as well. And then they would escape, and they would take the shortest route back to Germany to escape and get away. Sometimes they had bombs that were hung up. They wouldn't drop when they wanted them to drop, but maybe when they went over Cornwall, they were dropped. So they were got rid of. So they could get the aircraft could go faster and get home and avoid being shot down by the Spitfires.
It's a strange thing, but I lived in Lincoln for many years, and you know what it's like up there. You could throw a stone from one place to the next, bomb a county. It was so flat, and it was never bombed.
No, gosh,
it never. They had 7 bombs drop on Lincoln in the whole of the war.
Good gracious!
And you think, as you're coming across the Wash and that Lincoln Cathedral, you could see it from miles away. You think it would have been quite a thing just to just a carpet bomb. Never did. There was a RF Digby. There's a Spitfire base, but it wouldn't have been enough for a whole.
No,
it's just a strange thing. These strange things of the war that Cornwall took a hammer in and Lincoln didn't.
It did. There was talk at one stage that Cornwall was considered to be one of the landing areas had the Germans invaded. But I think history tells us now that, or research tells us now, that was really a feint. Realistically, we don't think they were going to come down this far. They certainly had a sort of like a decoy a group of warships come down, E-boats, for instance, these very fast patrol boats, to make us think that's what they would have done. They were coming down this way, and of course we know that now that it was further east, up towards the Dover, Eastbourne Dover area, that they planned Operation Sea Lion, and they were going to land there, of course, So, but it was. Cornwall, there was all sorts going on. There were 17 radar stations in Cornwall during the Second World War, at the height of once it had all been developed and put into place. Right from the north of Cornwall, right round near Bude, all the way round to Plymouth. So there's very important radar stations, top secret, of course, at the time, but they had their spies, so they knew things that were going on. The Lizard and Land's End, of course, was very important areas for the radar as well, and for ships coming around.
With the
Porthcurno, that was heavily defended. But we think they tried to bomb it, but they missed, because
it's a hell of a thing. Don't be so.
That's right. Yes, indeed. You had to be very accurate.
I went around it recently with my son, and what a day that was.
Oh, it's
fantastic museum.
Yeah, it is.
When you see Telegraphic Museum, you go, what? They're the telegraph poles, but no, it's fantastic.
I think that just the construction of it is something else. It's phenomenal construction,
And there's rooms there that were just decked out as they were in the war.
That's right.
Radios.
It is. It's
So anything else going on the day that I'm gonna have a word with Eliza when she comes in?
Yeah. So here in the MMI we'll have memorabilia, military memorabilia in the Ennis room, which is the door on the right there. So there'll be stuff going on there as well. There'll be talks starting in the morning at 10 o'clock with me speaking. And then Clyde Benny is going to give us a nice talk as well. We've got Bill McQuaid coming in, who's a World War II aficionado.
Right. Okay.
And then we've got two of the Enactment Society members as well coming in and actually physically showing some of the memorabilia to the audience, and letting them touch a Sten gun or a Tommy gun, or or something like that, or a hand grenade, deactivated, I must say. But things like that, so they get
That's fascinating. So I think the kids will be surprised how heavy these things were.
Absolutely, I'm sure they will. I was definitely when I first picked one up. So and then after that, I think it's 3:30. There's going to be some old time sort of singing and dancing going on here as well. And cream teas, of course. Cream teas.
It's a packed day. I can't wait.
That's right. The memorabilia will still be here on the Sunday. We won't have the vehicles. They're only here for the one day, the Saturday. So, but there'll be the memorabilia. So will be here, and there'll be some. And the band's playing, of course, as well. St Agnes band will be down on the lawn down at the chapel as well on the Saturday. So that should be good. I think they're coming here on the Sunday, but Eliza will be able to tell us.
I suppose there'll be some. There may be some people come that were here. But they've really got to be in the 90s now, I think.
They are. Yeah. They are. Yes, I know one.
It's 80th anniversary, so
exactly. I know one that's coming. There will be a second one, of course, who'll be coming as well. So hopefully, and and hopefully a few more pop in, or people that have had relations. Some mothers and fathers were involved in the war, so they've got their memorabilia and their memories. And they'll come along and as well and spread those and share those memories with us as well.
They sort of the sort of thing. I spoke when we had a podcast in the hotel about the fact of some of the stories that I know from the war, from my father being a pilot, and my mother used to tell me about Nottingham and what went on in the war there. And I'm starting to write those down because when I go, they go.
Yeah, that's right.
Most of my family's gone with us. And so I'm writing them down. I think it's a good idea. Anybody that's got those stories. I mean, one that I tell now and then is that my mother going back from the shelter one morning. They lived in a terraced house, with the yard and the toilet, the outside toilet and that sort of thing. And she said she looked out they opened the back door and that sort of thing. She went out in the backyard and there was a cooker stood there. A gas cooker. And she thought, and she said, got a wonky leg, but it looked perfect. And in those days, they used to have bottom drawer and they'd have a cookbook usually in there. And she opened the bottom drawer and there was this cookbook and with a woman and their address in. And it had come from Bulwer, which is 3.5 to 4 miles away.
God.
They'd been bombed that night.
God.
So somehow this cooker just went,
whoa, goodness me.
It's just, and then just plugged himself there. Those sort of stories,
that's right.
They go. And I mean, there was always, the war was just always in the house. We had Spitfire bullets, tracer ones, things like that. And lots of things as kids we used to play for. And I used to read all those battle picture library books, which I'm sure you did.
That's right.
Always like. Yeah. And when my son was growing up, I started getting them for him, and he was like, "Oh, here we," and because it meant nothing to him. No. We talked about it, went through it, but to us, the war was just, I was 52, I was born 7 years late after this.
Fortunately, I can't remember anything like that. No action at all. My service in the Royal Air Force, I never saw any action. A lot of pretend action, and that's exciting enough, but the real action for the real heroes is something else. So I can only think about, not dream about, but think about. And I sympathise for all those who did take part in it. But nothing surprises me. When you hear stories about the Second World War and the things that went on and what people got up to, nothing surprises me at all anymore. It's and the things that were done nationally to fight the enemy. It's absolutely incredible. Pluto, the pipeline under the sea for D-Day, for instance. a phenomenal achievement. You know, when
I think if we could get that into nowadays, I mean, we've got countries in Africa with no water, and you think in the war that they just built this huge pipeline and just brought it in because some countries got too much water and some not enough.
That's right.
Surely it's not beyond the wit of man to sort that out.
I agree.
It comes into money and it's not being attacked, but it's that's fascinating.
Yeah,
Thanks,
good.
Phil.
Do you
Oh yeah, carry on, sorry.
just mention quickly about VJ Day?
Yeah.
A lot of people had fathers, brothers, or whatever away fighting in the Far East, and fortunately, it all came to an end, if you like, on the 15th of August, 1945, when the atom bomb was dropped on.
So only a couple of months after.
Yeah,
so
it's quite short.
really amazing. I thought it was the next year afterwards.
Had it gone on without dropping the bomb, it could have gone on for another 2 years at least.
I mean, the Japanese were fanatical fighters.
They were.
I know there's that guy in the 70s, remember the mid-70s, that they found this bloke on an island?
Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed.
Still fighting the war.
Yeah, still thinking it was on. Absolutely. And we got the last military parade that took place in the parish outside in front of the MMI here was the 3rd of July 1949, and the war was officially declared over. This was one of the last military parades held in the parish, and Field Marshal Wavell took the salute. We've got some photographs which Clive will have in his display.
Wavell was here.
Yeah. So and he stood outside of the MMI and saluted the soldiers, nurses, home guard, all the auxiliaries, all went,
Forget that. It's like the women who flew the Spitfires around and that.
Absolutely.
No, just a map. There's no radar on the road. Amazing people.
Yeah. Following railway lines.
They sort of say, it's not a truism, I think it's just something people say, the kids today, if it happened today, they wouldn't tell you what to do. I think they would. I think, that I don't suppose the kids then were, looking forward to war or anything like that. No. And they're probably just the same. I think they would. I think we would fight for our own country, wouldn't we? And that's it.
I'd like to think so. Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's right. It's a very contentious topic, isn't it? Really, it's. I think they would when push comes to shove. You can see it in a lot of the voluntary organisations around the place.
Yeah.
The lifeboat, they never seem to be short of crew.
No, exactly.
The surf saving clubs.
Yeah.
There's always people there, almost lining up to join them, and the Red Cross, the British Legion, the medical services. They're there, aren't they? So
They was. I mean, on election day, a young lady came up to me outside the scout hut. I think she was 16 or 17, and she said, "How can you get me in touch with people that I can help? I really want to help people."
Brilliant.
And I did. I've got in touch with the council people, and they're sort of working with her, and there are those kids about.
Yeah.
They get derided all the time, but I think they're pretty good.
Yeah. So. One thing we mustn't forget was the prisoners of war, and I've got here.
Oh right, of course.
We must remember them. I've got here a cutting from, we think it's the West Briton newspaper, and this was passed to me by Clive. Home to St Agnes, Private Foster Williams, DCLI, Duke of Cornwall's Light Infantry, liberated from a German prison camp, has returned to his home in Cottage Row, St Agnes. Private Williams was captured about 10 days before the fall of Tobruk. Before joining up, he was employed by Mr. A.I. Reynolds of Vicarage Road. Sergeant F. Olds, Royal Army Service Corps, eldest son of Mr. and Mrs. R.J. Olds of Real Kitty Terrace, St Agnes. Returned last week after being liberated from a prisoner of war camp in Germany. Sergeant Olds is a former secretary of the Miners and Mechanics Institute, and before joining up, he was on the staff of the County Surveyor at Truro. He was also a playing member of the St Agnes Association Football Club.
All right.
He was taken prisoner at Tobruk as well.
Yeah.
And finally, Warrant Officer J.R. Jones, RAF, elder son of Mr. H. Jones, Argyle Cottages, Peterville, St Agnes, has also returned. He was in captivity in Germany just over 2 years, having joined the RAF in 1941, and previously was an accountant in London. And that was written. That was written in the West Briton, or placed in the West Briton, shortly after the end of the war when they came So
were the prisoners of war the other way? Were the prisoners of war down here? There were Italians or Germans or?
there were, there were. I can't remember the number of prisoner of war camps that there was. Principally, it was the Italians in prisoner of war camps down here, but there was also Germans as well.
I know up in Lincolnshire, a lot of the farms there, they moved the Italian prisoners of war to work on the farms to produce food for us, I think.
Yeah.
So, but I guess they go home as well, and it must be a strange time.
It must be. A lot of them stayed, of course. Not
yes,
all
they
went
did.
home.
Yes, they did.
But
I was learning disability nurse, and there were a lot of Italian charge nurses who before I got there, the people used to talk about them, and they used to work in the asylums, as we call them, and were just given the nursing qualification because they've been there that long. And they looked after the patients there. Neil, that's really fascinating, and thank you ever so much.
Not at all. No, and please, if you do come to the event,
I'll be here.
I'll
be here definitely.
20th of July, definitely.
And I hope a lot of people will.
Absolutely.
And it's there's a lot of work gone into it, and thanks for that.
And hopefully we'll have some nice weather like today.
Yeah.
And people will have a look over the vehicles down there, sit on the gun, whatever, and just enjoy it.
Sit and have a pint outside.
Yeah, and tell us stories. And if you've got a story to tell us, be it about a relative or your father or whatever, your brother, do come and tell us, because we love to have the stories. It's like you said earlier, the better we can write them down, record them, keep them for posterity, the better. It's like a giant jigsaw puzzle. All the pieces all come together, and out of it you get something of interest, I think, for future generations.
There's one story I'm sorry, we'll take going on again, but when I first moved to Lincoln, I used to go into a pub called the Falstaff, and there was a lady behind the bar there, Madge, who must have been in her 80s, still very attractive, and I was asking her where my father was moved from Biggin Hill up to Scampton, and apparently there's one pub Mum used to tell me that he used to go into where he could cash his checks. Nobody else did it with him. And I was asking her about this, and she said, "Oh yeah, that was under the stone, but that was down there." And she started talking to me, and then she said, "I worked in a lot of the pubs in Lincoln in that time," and she said, "We had them all here." She said we had Sikhs, we had Canadians, New Zealanders, Americans, lots of Americans, the British, of course, French, Free French. And she said when they went out on a sortie, they'd say, "Madge, I'm flying tomorrow. Just look after this, will you?" And they'd leave her a cufflink or a cigarette lighter, or in some cases a watch. And it was just leaving something behind.
Yeah.
And she said, under my bed, I've got a shoebox full of things like that.
Yeah.
They might come back one day.
They might come back one day. Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah, lovely. Well, thanks ever so much, Neil.
Pleasure. Great.
Thanks for all you're doing.
Lovely. Thank you.